Snap Inc. and Disney announced that they each plan to lay off 1,000 employees. And now the Wall Street Journal poses a critical question. Are we now living in the era of the mega layoff? Cenk, I feel like we've been in the era. What are your 2 cents?
Yeah, so no, it's begun. This is the tip of the iceberg, and we're gonna hit that iceberg super hard. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Yaz is gonna tell you about a bunch of significant layoffs across multiple different companies. But the most important part is the trend that it's setting off. So let's give you the facts and then discuss.
Okay, so on Wednesday, Snap CEO Evan Spiegel stated that his company's layoffs were directly related to new AI technology, which is what we all know, but they say it out loud now. So he said, "We believe that rapid advancements in artificial intelligence enable our teams to reduce repetitive work, increase velocity, and better support our community, partners, and advertisers." He said, "We have already witnessed small squads leveraging AI tools to drive meaningful progress across several important initiatives, blah, blah, blah." And according to Snap, AI agents are already generating over 65% of the company's new code and responding to over 1 million queries per month. The layoffs hit about 16% of the company's workforce. Snap's stock price, however, increased 7% after the announcement. That is a trend. Keep your eye on that. So one day earlier, Disney announced that they too were laying off 1,000 employees. And while Disney did not explicitly name check AI, the company implied that AI had something to do with it. So Josh D'Amaro, the CEO of Disney, stated this. He said, "Given the fast moving pace of our industries, this requires us to constantly assess how to foster a more agile and technologically enabled workforce to meet tomorrow's needs." However, Disney is a much larger company than Snap, meaning that its 1,000 layoffs impacted less than 1% of its workforce, but there's more on Disney later that I can mention. After the announcement though, Disney shares went up about 1.5%. So Snap and Disney aren't the only companies announcing layoffs recently. We've heard from Amazon and Block and also from Oracle. They have all downsized. And the Wall Street Journal has labeled this trend as the mega layoff. And there's a reason why it exists. So employers are seizing on the potential financial upsides of severing swaths of their workforces at once. That is a departure from not long ago when mass layoffs registered as a sign of trouble or mismanagement, and that a company needed to take drastic measures to right its performance. But now such a company is more likely to get a big stock bump and praise from investors for acting boldly. And in fact, Block has claimed that after it laid off nearly half of its employees, other executives reached out to ask how they could do likewise at their own companies. So I feel like, if anything, we are living in the era of stock market manipulation. Cenk, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Okay, first a tiny bit of nuance. So Snap is probably a little bit different than the others. It's a smaller company and it might be, disguising some of its problems with saying, "Oh, we're getting more efficient through AI." So sometimes a company here or there will have its own particular problems, right? Now, I don't know the details of what Snap is going through, so that's just a general point, right? But overall, is it a trend that is affecting some companies and soon most companies? Definitely. So I've been telling you for a while now, I've been hearing about in the business world that there's a competition to cut 25% of their workforce. And it's perceived as whoever gets there first has an advantage, and that everybody else has to catch up super quick. This article is almost word for word what I've been telling you for at least 6 months here. But except there is a big difference. Now the competition is closer to trying to get to getting rid of 40% of your workforce. So, okay, that's an epic disaster, and they don't seem to understand. I think right now, like the lowest IQ people work on Wall Street. And so, let me explain, it's not just a random insult, "Oh, I don't like rich people." No, I get it, I'm a capitalist, I understand it. And I understand the roles that the markets serve. But now they're all getting incredible praise and the stock bump. That's the most important thing. Their stock price goes up when they fire more people. And again, there's some logic to it from a business perspective, because then your costs are lower. And if you can still bring in the same revenue with lower costs, of course the market's gonna reward you because now you're making more profit. I understand all that. But guys, let's take the lower number, forget 40, let's say 25%. If everybody fires 25% of their workforce, knucklehead on Wall Street, what do you think is going to happen? They're like lemmings running off the cliff. And they're like, wee, this is so much fun. You're right, for about 12 seconds it's super fun until you hit the bottom, okay? But when you have massive, unprecedented unemployment, who's gonna buy your stuff? And it feels like, yes, they're not even thinking about that at all. I'm not sure it's occurred to any of them, whether it's Wall Street or our politicians. As usual, the only guy here talking about AI and warning about the apocalypse, economic apocalypse, is Ro Khanna. But outside of him, the politicians like, oh great, 25% unemployment. Are you crazy? That'll totally obliterate our economy. So yeah, I couldn't be more worried.
Yeah, and Mark Cuban, he actually did bring up that same point. And this was years ago. He's like, we need people to have money so they can buy our stuff. Right now, however, the bulk of like the vast majority, I don't have the exact number, but the vast majority of our economy, apart from the stock market, all the purchasing power is coming from a very small group of people. Like the upper middle class and upper classes are doing the bulk of the spending in this country. So maybe they're just going to start relying on those people more, but I don't know what they think is going to happen long term. If people are homeless and are just on the streets and can't afford food, like what kind of dystopia are you hoping to build and create and live in? And they all have their bunkers somewhere else down in New Zealand or wherever they're going. Like they all think that they're hobbits now, like they're very hobbit core of the billionaires. That's what they're doing now. But as far as Disney, I did say that I had some more points about that one. Perfect Union just reported that of those Disney layoffs, they're laying off about 8% of the Marvel workers specifically. And they're also in the process of moving Marvel Studios from Atlanta, Georgia to the UK. And they're also converting a bunch of their salaried workers to contract workers. And why are they doing any of this? Because they won't have to pay them benefits. They don't want to have to pay for healthcare for their workers. So what they're doing is converting the salary people to contracts so you don't have to pay healthcare there, and moving the whole operation over to the UK so that they don't have to pay for healthcare. So instead of these companies lobbying this country for something like universal healthcare, which is something that people overwhelmingly support in this country, they would rather just do all of that and move across the ocean than just say, you know what? We should have that here. They have universal healthcare over there. It's done by the government, not given to people through their companies, which was always just like an insane thing. That is not a normal thing that Americans are just so used to, but that's where the majority of Americans get their healthcare from. And unfortunately, we have a lot more contract workers in the country these days because companies have figured out that they can bypass that. And to be fair, I don't necessarily blame companies for not wanting to pay those costs because it is expensive and it shouldn't necessarily be their responsibility. But that's why we advocate for things like healthcare coming from the government. And these companies, they get it to the point that they're willing to move to a country that does have those benefits. But instead they could just be like, hey, let's also have that here. And they have the money and they have the influence, but they choose not to wield it in any way that would actually benefit their own workers.
Yeah, the only people in competition with Wall Street for lowest IQ are mainstream media, who every once in a while will say like, oh, that's surprising. We would think that Disney would be more patriotic. They're amoral machines. We wrote a code saying maximize profit. They're gonna move out of the country the minute they think they can save 10 cents from it. They're gonna fire 25% or 40% of their workforce the minute they think they can save any money. They're not human. They don't have patriotism or any other feelings. And those non-humans are about to steamroll us. And it feels like no one in power has any idea what's coming. And like I said earlier, I'm super worried about it.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.